FIFA just made its biggest move yet in this entire saga. After a week of investigation, the governing body has formally charged 4 people connected to Argentina's World Cup campaign with assault and unsporting conduct, and one of them could be facing a suspension that stretches into double digits. Let's be precise about where things actually stand right now, because this story has already been through a lot of confusion. A red card that got shown then deleted, an investigation that seemed to move at a crawl, a leaked letter from FIFA's own president praising Argentina's professionalism in the middle of all of it, even UEFA threatening to blow up the entire relationship with FIFA over an unrelated ownership dispute this same week. What's happened now is a real concrete step forward in the one part of this saga that's actually about accountability rather than governance or money. But it's important to get the details exactly right, because charged is not the same thing as banned, and the difference matters, especially with how fast headlines have been running ahead of the actual facts throughout this entire story. Here's what FIFA's disciplinary committee actually announced. Following the report from the disciplinary and ethics prosecutor appointed after the final, FIFA has opened formal disciplinary proceedings against 3 Argentina players and 1 member of the coaching staff. Leandro Paredes faces 3 separate counts of assault under Article 14 of FIFA's disciplinary code. Nahuel Molina faces 2 counts of assault, 1 completed, 1 attempted, plus a separate charge of unsporting behavior, and Argentina assistant coach Roberto Ayala faces 1 count of assault. On top of that, Thiago Almada has been charged with unsporting behavior, and in a detail that makes this a genuinely two-sided case rather than a one-sided pile-on, Spain's own Gavi has also been charged with unsporting conduct for his part in the scuffle that followed the initial flashpoint. It's worth understanding what Article 14 actually covers because it's the charge doing most of the heavy lifting here. FIFA's disciplinary code defines assault, in football terms, as using excessive force or brutality against an opponent, opposing official, teammate, own club official, spectator, or any other person, and it's treated as one of the more serious individual conduct charges available under the entire code, well above a standard unsporting behavior citation. The fact that Paredes, Molina, and Ayala are all being charged specifically under this article rather than the lesser unsporting conduct charge Almada and Gavi received tells you FIFA's prosecutor concluded their actions crossed a meaningfully higher threshold than simple post-match handbags. That last detail's worth sitting with for a second, because it complicates the narrative that's dominated this story for weeks. This hasn't been framed anywhere as Argentina versus an innocent Spain. It's genuinely been reported as Argentina's conduct against Spain's players. But FIFA's own charge sheet shows the disciplinary process looked at everyone involved in that scuffle, on both sides, and decided Gavi's own conduct in the chaos also crossed a line worth charging, even if it's a far less serious charge than what Paredes and Molina are facing. Let's go through exactly what these players are accused of, because the specific wording FIFA used tells you a lot about how seriously they're taking each incident. Paredes' 3 counts of assault relate to his role grabbing Eric Garcia by the throat and then pinning Gavi to the ground by his substitute's bib. 2 separate opponents, multiple distinct moments of contact, which is why he's facing 3 counts rather than 1. Molina's 2 counts of assault stem from what was described as 1 completed and 1 attempted act of aggression, connected to that initial moment where he appeared to strike out at Spain captain Rodri as Spain's players ran on to celebrate. And Argentina assistant coach Roberto Ayala faces 1 count of assault. On top of that, Thiago Almada has been charged with unsporting behavior, and in a detail that makes this a genuinely two-sided case rather than a one-sided pile-on, Spain's own Gavi has also been charged with unsporting conduct for his part in the scuffle that followed the initial flashpoint. That Ayala situation has actually developed its own smaller controversy since the brawl itself. Days after the final, Ayala issued a public apology for his role in the incident, but he was careful with his own language, insisting what happened was more of a push than anything else, and specifically denying that it was a punch. Olmo wasn't having it. Speaking to the Spanish outlet Diario de Terraza, he flatly rejected the apology and accused Ayala of lying about what actually happened. So even the apology that was supposed to calm this specific piece of the story ended up generating its own separate dispute, running in parallel with FIFA's formal charges. Now, on top of all 4 individual charges, there's a much bigger front in this story that shouldn't get lost. The Argentine Football Association itself is facing disciplinary proceedings on multiple fronts at once. One set of charges relates to the political banner controversy from the semifinal against England, where Argentina players held up a sign referencing the Falkland Islands as Argentine territory, a direct violation of FIFA's rules against using a sporting event for non-sporting political demonstrations, given how sensitive that specific territorial dispute remains between Argentina and the UK. Separately, FIFA has also opened proceedings against the AFA relating to alleged breaches during, in FIFA's own words, several matches across the tournament. A phrase that suggests this isn't limited to just the final and the banner incident, but potentially covers a wider pattern of conduct issues across Argentina's entire World Cup run. So when you add it all up, Argentina's federation is currently facing disciplinary scrutiny across at least 3 separate tracks simultaneously: the individual assault and conduct charges against Paredes, Molina, Almada, and Ayala, the Falklands banner charge, and this broader, still fairly vague set of allegations covering multiple matches. That's an extraordinary amount of exposure for one federation to be facing all at once, in the immediate aftermath of what should have been remembered as a runner-up finish in a genuinely competitive World Cup final. Think about the range of possible consequences FIFA has at its disposal for the federation-level charges alone, separate from whatever happens to the individual players. Al Jazeera's own breakdown of the situation laid out just how wide FIFA's toolkit is here, everything from a formal warning or reprimand up through a genuinely substantial financial fine, to orders requiring the AFA to improve its crowd control and match organization going forward. That's before you even get to the more severe end of the scale that FIFA has used against other federations in the past for serious conduct violations, which can include restrictions on where future matches can be played or played in front of fans at all. Nobody is suggesting Argentina is anywhere near that most extreme outcome right now, but it gives you a sense of just how much latitude FIFA's disciplinary committee actually has once it moves from charging individuals to sanctioning an entire federation. Now here's the part that matters most if you're trying to understand where this actually goes from here, because this is where a lot of the online conversation about this story has gotten ahead of itself. What's happened so far is that FIFA has opened proceedings and issued formal charges. That is a serious, meaningful step, but it is not the same thing as a confirmed suspension. Under FIFA's own process, the individuals and the federation named in these charges now get the opportunity to present their position and respond to the allegations. Only after that happens does the disciplinary committee actually issue its rulings, and FIFA's own language on the timeline has been deliberately vague, saying only that a decision will be issued in due course, with no specific date attached. That distinction matters enormously for how you should read anything you see online calling this a done deal. Reports have circulated estimating what the eventual punishments could look like if these charges are upheld. Some outlets suggesting Paredes could be facing a suspension as long as 9 matches, given the severity and number of counts against him. Molina potentially looking at somewhere between 4 and 6 matches, and Ayala facing a shorter ban, possibly in the range of 3 matches, or a touchline restriction rather than a full playing suspension. Al Jazeera's own breakdown of the situation described Ayala as more likely to face a touchline ban or a stadium suspension for a set number of matches, rather than the kind of lengthy ban being discussed for Paredes, while suggesting Almada and Gabi's unsporting conduct charges are more likely to end in shorter suspensions or even just formal warnings if they're found guilty at all. Those are informed estimates based on how FIFA's disciplinary code typically scales punishments for this kind of offense, not confirmed outcomes. Nobody has actually been banned yet. Nothing here is final. It's genuinely possible some of these charges get reduced, appealed successfully, or even dropped entirely once the individuals involved present their defense, the same way it's happened before in Argentina's own disciplinary history, most notably back in 2017, when Lionel Messi's 4-match ban for insulting a match official was fully overturned on appeal after the Argentine Federation pushed back on FIFA's original ruling. That history is actually worth bringing up here because it cuts both ways. On one hand, it shows Argentina's federation has real experience successfully fighting FIFA disciplinary rulings when they believe the punishment doesn't fit the offense, so nobody should assume these charges automatically translate into the exact suspensions being speculated about right now. The Messi case in particular is instructive. FIFA's own appeals committee looked at the original ruling, found the process itself had been flawed, and set the whole suspension aside entirely, restoring Messi to Argentina's squad before their must-win qualifier against Ecuador. That's a real, recent example of Argentina's federation using FIFA's own appeals process successfully, not just complaining publicly about an unfair outcome. On the other hand, it also shows FIFA has a track record of following through on Argentina-related discipline when the evidence is strong enough, as seen back in 2021 when FIFA ordered an abandoned Brazil-Argentina qualifier to be replayed and handed 2 match bans to 4 Argentina players over a completely separate protocol violation alongside financial fines for both federations involved. FIFA does act on these things and does follow through with real enforced suspensions when the underlying case holds up. It just takes its own time doing it, and the outcome isn't automatically the harshest version being floated in headlines right now. There's also a wider credibility question hanging over all of this that goes beyond just Paredes and Molina individually. Remember, this same disciplinary process is the one that initially reported Paredes as sent off live on broadcast, only to quietly remove that red card from the official match record entirely days later, chalked up to a technical display error. That confusion already damaged trust in how cleanly FIFA's disciplinary machinery was operating around this specific incident. These formal charges represent FIFA getting back on more solid procedural ground, proper charges, proper process, and actual opportunity for the accused to respond. But after everything else that's happened around this story, from the vanishing card to the leaked Infantino letter praising Argentina's professionalism in the middle of an active investigation, there's an entire audience out there who isn't going to fully trust the outcome until an actual ruling lands and holds up. It's worth remembering, too, just how much noise has been swirling around this story from directions that have nothing to do with the actual disciplinary process. A petition calling for Argentina to be banned from future World Cups gathered more than 23 million signatures. A separate, much smaller petition from Argentina's own supporters demanded the final be replayed entirely, alleging referee bias. President Javier Milei dismissed the entire backlash as jealousy. None of that public sentiment has any formal bearing on what FIFA's disciplinary committee actually decides. These charges were built on the prosecutor's report and the video evidence, not on petition signatures or presidential tweets. But it does mean that whatever ruling eventually comes down is going to land in front of an audience that's already picked sides, in the tens of millions, long before the actual verdict exists. So here's where things genuinely stand right now, no speculation attached. 4 individuals connected to Argentina have been formally charged: Paredes, Molina, and Almada as players, Ayala as a member of the coaching staff, alongside Spain's own Gavi on a lesser charge. The Argentine Football Association is facing separate proceedings covering the Falklands banner and the broader, still fairly undefined set of conduct issues from across the tournament. Estimated potential suspensions have been reported by multiple outlets, ranging from possible touchline restrictions up to a suspension in the 9-match range for Paredes specifically. But none of that is confirmed. The actual ruling hasn't been issued, the respondents haven't finished presenting their case, and FIFA hasn't given any concrete date for when we should expect that to change.